I'm going to start it.
Okay, go.
Okay, I'm LuElla Seiler McWilliams, and I live in Champaign with my husband Glenn McWilliams, and Uncle Gene Seiler is here, and we're going to have Uncle Gene tell us about his life. This is Thanksgiving Day, November the 27th, 2008, and we're all here to celebrate this wonderful Thanksgiving. And Uncle Gene, tell us about your life.
I'm Norman Gene Seiler, and I was born January the 10th, 1924. I started to school when I was 4, so I graduated from high school when I was quite young. Wasn't old enough to get a job yet. I worked around a lot of different places. I worked as a janitor in the Albany Township High School during the summer and then through school year. I had a job on the railroad as soon as I turned 18, but they wouldn't let me lie about my age, so I had to work out. And that summer I graduated, the year I graduated, I ran a filling station at a grocery store on East Main Street, not very far from where Meridian lives, until I was 18. And the day I was 18, I went to work on the railroad. I started at Millington, Tennessee. That's just north of Memphis, and they were building a big naval base there at that time. And the man who ran the pump station was a Nazi sympathizer. He was glad they were killing off all the Jews. And I visited with him a time or two, and I never, of course, didn't have any thinking about what he was saying. While I was there in about the first 2 weeks, by the way, what we did was to drill water wells, or clean water wells for the trains. Back in that time, almost all the trains were run by steam power, so water was very critical. And all through the Mississippi Delta, we could get water about 100 feet, ample water about 100 feet. Anyhow, there was a sabotage on a train in this naval base, near the naval base. And the FBI swooped in there, and it had to be the 110th degree, and they didn't give up. They kept on. Anyhow, they finally got convinced and left me out. And that wouldn't bother me and the people I worked for. And then we spent most all the time, we worked out all the time while I was on the railroad, working below the Mason-Dixon line. And I got the shock of my life because I didn't realize how the blacks were being treated. Even the section hands made less. Mason-Dixon. I got to work on the railroad for a full year before I was drafted into the service. I was drafted into the service and went to join the Seabees. I got into the Seabees because of my boss of the railroad was named Emery Myers, and his son was already in the Seabees. And he thought this would be a good place for me to be because they were hiring, they wanted people that were in construction. So anyhow, I went to our first base with Providence, Rhode Island. Camp Perry, Virginia. It was a hog pen. It was a terrible camp. And we were there through the worst of their winter. From there, we went to Providence, Rhode Island. We were up there for, I guess, maybe 2 months. And I was drafted in, I guess, in January. And by August, we'd been out in Port Miami. We had all of our Marine combat training. And we were ready to be shipped over, and we were shipped over in August. I was on the first boat for 30 days, just getting to New Caledonia. We traveled that route unescorted the whole way, we thought. Come to find out years afterwards, after I got the naval history, this was a submarine picket line. It was supposed to be a safe travel area or travel route for cargo vessels. We were in New Caledonia most of us didn't get off the boat there, but they did take us to a place they called Shangri-La, and they let the guys have you could either have a can of beer or Coke. And from there we went on up to up by Guadalcanal, stopped there for a little bit. And from Guadalcanal we went up to the West Islands, Nica. That was the first island we got off on. We were there for a while. This is our people's first experience in working with coral. One of the things that most people didn't realize, if we could take coral rock and salt water and make a rock-hard runway for airplanes. And that's what we were doing. We were building airships. Of course, there was always a lot of other things we had to do, too. And by this time, I guess, They had to come aware of some of my abilities, and from that point on, the rest of my career, till the war was over, all I did was what I call security work. I always carried a weapon of some kind, either guarded product or people, or kept people out working. Most of my work was at night. We'd go to work just before dark and stay out till daylight. Our first invasion was on Sterling Island, which is part of the Treasure Island group. Our island we landed on was not a very large island. We carved the airfield out of this island in 30 days. Had bombers landing and trying to go off from there. And it was a solid jungle we took there. We landed there. We had, I should have told you that we had people that were qualified in everything you could think of in construction. We ran everyone's sawmill. We cut all the lumber for all the flooring, for all the tents that was on the island, just all kinds of things like that. On this island we got our first bath, blood bath. We lost several guys. When we landed, LST, when the lid went down, well, we landed with the New Zealand troops, and they were supposed to take it over all apart and away. But when we landed, they opened up with a machine gun or some kind of gun right into the opening of the LST. And there was this one young kid there. The man was supposed to take the dozer off, so he wasn't going to do that. So this kid jumps on it and takes it off. And he's smart enough to know that he can use that blade as a deflector. And that's just exactly what he did. He dropped it right on this fuel box, buried them all. And then they all got ashore. Now, the rest of that story is that they had to dig it out later. I don't know if they were all dead, of course. They weren't quite all dead. We got 2 prisoners of war that were taken over by intelligence. And this weapon they had used on firing at us was something similar to the Gatling guns you've read about. And it was so that the military intelligence wanted it. So we had to dig it out. We were there, and this was real close to the equator, and it was ungodly hot every day. Not working out in the sun, it was 120 degrees. And they finally got us some, they call them pith helmets, but they were kind of cardboard sun hats. But then nowadays they're using the floppy canvas hats for protection of your skin. We had several casualties, and we saw lots of planes destroyed there. Our radar in those days were pathetic. That was the first thing. Our small group of our people set up the radar on the other island. There was 2 islands in this group, and they had a lot of higher elevation, so they set it up there. But our radar in those days were so pathetic that it wouldn't pick up. Their bombers would follow our planes back in as they were returning, and they'd clobber us regularly, and they destroyed a lot of our planes. From there, we got to go back to send us back to New Caledonia. This time there was a camp already started on called Mount Dover, and that's where we set up and lived. Only about the first day there, I started to do some work, and they came and got me for a security job. We were 6 or 8 of us set up close to town to protect stuff. And also, well, I guess the first day I went out with an MP with them to wrestle the drunks, and that was it for me. I said, the only way I can handle these rascals is to kill them. You're not going to let me do that. I said, no, you can't. And I'll use this billy club and hold it up this way. So anyhow, I didn't have to do that anymore. So all the time we were there, and then the rest of the time we were there, that's what I did, was security work of different kinds. This was a small group, and we were near the town of Mia. From there, we loaded back on a ship. We went to Saipan. Well, Saipan was supposed to have been over there, but they stuck us on the backside of an island, on the backside of Saipan. And there were literally thousands of troops still there, unorganized. They had to steal enough food to survive. So our main thing there was protecting our own food supply. And then after we'd been there a while and had our camp established, And at that time, the beaches were getting filled with strategic material, and on this thing, we only had to work from midnight on. They split 2 shifts on that because you had to keep walking all the time on that one. But I can't explain to people the tons and tons of material that were on the beach there at the Saipan that were basically loaded up and hauled on up to the next battle. Let's see. And, I had to stay and help clean up the camp at Saipan, where you had moved out of the camp. You either had some of the unit take it over or you had to clean it up. Well, I got hooked on the stand with one of the officers that liked me, I guess. I'm going to say he cleaned it up, and they got infection in my wisdom teeth. And I had to go to another dentist besides our own, when our own people were already left. So they took me to some other dentist on the island, and I got a severe infection. And the day we got on that boat, my temperature was over 105, and the first thing they did was, they didn't have a doctor, just had a corpsman. The first thing they did was direct me right to what they call sick bay. And I don't remember anything until we got there. I don't know what they did to me, what they did. I don't remember eating. I must have been doing something, but I'm not sure what kind of drugs we had in those days. I don't know whether we had penicillin in there or not. I don't remember. But I just know that they took care of me some way. On Okinawa, I landed on the other side of the island. From where most of my troops, I landed on the Buckner Bay side, which was where a lot of activity was. We went in these cargo vessels. The cargo vessels couldn't get in very close. So we laid out in Buckner Bay, and by this time the kamikazes, the suicide planes were getting really thick. And towards the end of the war, we did real thing. Even the kamikazes didn't have a weapon in them. They were just one man sacrificing his life to destroy something. Saw a lot of them. Here again, as soon as I was able to move, they put me in. They dug a water well. I think my book tells me it was 8 by 10 or 10, but it was a huge hand-dug well for water. Water was a real critical, still is yet today. On Okinawa, water is a real scarce commodity. And they had set up a machine gun nest. They put in a machine gun, and that's where I spent all my nights on Okinawa until the war was over. I'd go there every night, just about dusk, and we had. Well, except we weren't just sound, we had, I said, a cell phone, I had a phone in our talking, and that was always in pairs. 2 guys. A lot of the times, a lot of the jobs we had, security jobs, if there were 2 of you, one was allowed to sleep, because most of the time you were so wore out and starved, you didn't have anything. The day was over. The day they finally surrendered, I finally did what I was trained to do, and that was what I knew how to do. It was drilling holes for water well. Only this time we were using a water belling rig. Drilled a whole bunch of holes in the face of a cliff to blast it off to make asphalt. We actually had one field of asphalt before we left there. Maybe back to the beginning, I forgot to tell you that when I went from boot camp to the next camp, I went from Virginia up to Providence, Rhode Island. The boss's son was at Providence, Rhode Island, and he was training blacks. And he wanted me, he'd come see me 2 times. He wanted me to stay there with him. Well, I just couldn't do that. I just didn't think that was the right way to do it. They were all, those blacks at that time were burning. Nothing but stevedores. Ship unloader, load, that's what they did. And he finally got sent overseas himself. He told me, I've seen him. He lives in Mattoon. And I forget how they were overseas for a while, not very long. When I come back from service, I did go back to my job on the railroad. But by that time I was old enough to know I should be trying to find a wife and settle down. And on the railroad jobs, we lived in camp cars. There was no social life whatsoever, or very little, if any. And all of our time being in the deep south, we were still damn Yankees and not very well accepted. So I just quit and come home. I went to work for Mr. Beatty. I started out as a parts man with a implement dealer, Beatty Oliver Company. Worked for a parts man for a while, and I thought I could sell. And they put me out on the road selling, and I did very well. Even up today, I'm having people come, "You sold me this?" Oh, man. Getting me some. But I did very well for them. And then we moved to the farm. And by that time, we had 2 boys. And a lot of hard work in the next several years.
And you married Aunt Lucille.
Well, yeah, I got married, but after I come back and went to work there, I could go up and see her regular, and we got married, and I don't know how long we were together.
Well, you went together because Burl had went into the service, and you waited to get married until Burl got out, didn't you? So he could be the best man.
You know, I was old and Burl, that was old. We were married in 47. He was out by the end of it. He got out about the same time. Yeah, I think you were close to it. I think that's right. And then we got out on this farm there. Well, we've been married 63 years, and we're on that farm for 50-some years. We moved out there in the dead of winter, 1st of January, and a house that was being partly tore down because the landowner was building a new house behind it. And it was a mortise and pound house, and the house would sway in the wind. Oh, Lucille gets so scared. I thought, anyhow, it was a livestock share lease. And this is about the time when stuff was really beginning to change in farming. And he still wanted to do everything we call the hard way. He wanted you all having a whole pasture operation. He couldn't understand bearing crates, and he didn't like. Well, he didn't want to pump any pins for storing grain, just things like that. Those didn't work out too well. He sold me 30 acres so I could fill up the house. He gave me an option on the rest of the 50. And so we executed that. And then everything was changing so fast that I went back to selling again. I became a swag grow fertilizer plant manager, and at the end of that job for 20 years. End of story.
And then also, you had 2 more children.
Well, yeah, they come along.
Well, what were their names?
Rosella Beth was born in 1954, I believe. And Chris was born when?
59.
Yep.
July the 10th.
That's right. And all 3 of the sons have spent time in the service. Chris spent the longest, 9 years. They all got involved in some kind of intelligence and security. I told them because I was such a good guy.
How many grandchildren?
Oh, you're asking questions, I think, grandchildren. We have lots of grandchildren and several great-grandchildren. Grandchildren, 3, 6, 9. 9 grandchildren.
Uncle Gene, is it true that Grandma always thought you were the favorite, or was it Dad?
Which grandma are you talking about?
Grandma
Mary
Mary.
Seiler.
Oh, I suppose they thought I was a favorite. I guess back then I had charm.
Tell me some of the stories that you and Burl used to do.
Oh, we did all kind of escapades. Some of the stuff I wouldn't like, I couldn't even know about today.
What do you mean? How about the time that Burl, was it Lake Pedisa that you put in the trunk of the car and rode all over Preston Township?
Yeah, they were people were always trying to fix me up with women. Even this over there, always trying to get some prostitute. They would never quit. I said, no hell, I ain't gonna do that. But yeah, they were very not the kind of people I wanted to be. But yeah, we began to run around a little bit before I went to the service. I worked at Mike's Ice Cream Parlor. Forgot that part of it. Worked at Mike's Ice Cream Parlor for a while. And they thought we were going out someplace. So 2 of the guys worked in there too. So Burl and somebody else got in the trunk of this car when I took.
Well, it was Les Pedisa, wasn't it?
I don't know. I took them. I was taking Carl Holes up to not close to where Jenny lives now. A town north of her.
Stringtown?
No, north one further.
St. Marie.
Yeah, they St. Mary's big Catholic son. They wanted to go up there. So I took them up there. And that's when I told them I should have left them up there. I was so mad.
So you gave him a ride, huh?
Yeah, just hauled them up there. Now, we had a lot of close calls tonight.
How about all the tricks that you used to pull on Aunt Ida and Uncle Earl? Dump at the toilets and...
Oh, yeah, at Halloween, young kids used to be honoring the devil at Halloween time. They would turn over outhouses. We would blockade the roads. Of course, the normal soaping windows and stuff like that, I guess, but we did some things that were kind of destructive. I'm sure probably, as I thought about years later, the thing that was probably the most dangerous was putting blockades in the roads. We did some of this.
Well, how about the Uncle Earl and Burl had this, they made this agreement, a working agreement, and they wanted you to sign it. And if you remember, Burl was to work for his Uncle Earl all summer long, and he was to get the best pig out of the litter, some small change and a pocket knife, and all the you-know-what.
Watermelon you can eat, yeah.
But you didn't know it was watermelon. And you wouldn't sign it because you weren't going to sign a document that you didn't know what it was.
Probably right. Still kind of the same way today.
How about all the stories about you and George and Burl?
Oh, we did some hungry things. George was a mute that lived with us. He lived
Well, he really was a cousin.
Well, anyhow, I remember one time he was harrowing down ground with horses. They were just go way back. And we climbed up a tree and broke off a limb and caused the horses to run. And he knew what had done. He come back. They used to use a piece of baling wire on a stick for a whip. He come back there, he was doing, at least he made his thing, he got it very tight, but he didn't.
Well, how about the time you put manure in his tobacco can?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember?
No.
Burl told the story of you two boys found where George hid his tobacco can because Mary wouldn't have it in the house, and you went and took this ground up old horse manure and mixed it with his tobacco and sat there and watched him chew it, and he spit it all over, and he was going to get the buggy whip and whip you to death until Mary come out and saved you.
That's very possible.
How about your pony?
Well, that was one good investment that we made. Oh, I didn't see. When they sold them out, the land brought $10 an acre. Uncle Abel bought the land for $10 an acre. Uncle Abel and Uncle Henry. And we were out, and Uncle Amos let us live there until these things about that. So that's all pretty well in there. But anyway, it's hard for people nowadays to visualize how really difficult it was during those Depression years. I remember Uncle Earl was teaching school up at Oakdale. That was just a little close to where we lived. And the family up there, they didn't have any food. They really didn't have any food at all. The kids were coming to school hungry, nothing to eat.
Well, I remember Uncle Earl telling the story that, Elmer Sturkey, his home place wasn't too far from Uncle Will's, and Elmer Sturkey told us that if it wouldn't have been for Uncle Earl, he was the one that would get a bag of oranges and apples and bring to them for Christmas, and that was all the Christmas they had.
Oh, wait, the pony, what happened was when they got sold out on the Hammer, I had a good Jersey cow, and Verl had a cow too, I guess. It was our forage project, and somehow they got lost in the shuffle with foreclosure. So Dad said he'd get it back for somewhere with it. So he finally bought a Shetland pony. And that's the one, probably the best investment he ever made. Because she'd have a colt for us every year. After she was, I guess, 3 years old. And they'd always bring more of the cow. They had a value that today wouldn't sound too good, I guess, but then it seemed like we got maybe $80 to $100 for them each time.
Well, it sounds like you've had a very interesting life, Uncle Gene.
Anyhow, I was going to tell you, Uncle Grandpa's favorite song was Precious Book.
Precious book.
What was it about?
Bible?
It's in the
About the Bible.
Precious book.
Precious Book is the Bible.
So this is a favorite song of your grandfather,
My
Christian Seiler?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
This is before my time, but whenever they had the big disaster down in Galveston, back when he was a younger man, and the same thing happened on the West Coast when they had the terrible earthquake out there. He went both places to help out.
Hmm. So he was a good man. Did you know him?
Yeah, but you see, he died when we were so young.
Mm-hmm.
He said he died in
33.
I was born in 24, so I would have been, what, 6 or 7. And when we moved to this farm, he moved to town, so we didn't get to see Mario till him. But like I was trying to say, Dad took us to see him when he was in the hospital. LuElla says it says he died of heart attack. But he was in terrible, terrible pain Dad took us in there because he knew the near was was near, I guess. And I'm quite sure he died of cancer, or prostate cancer, or that kind of moaning and pain that he had to endure.
Hmm.
We got wild geese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how old was he when he died? Was he pretty young?
No, that. Did you tell him?
Hmm.
His first wife, I'm thinking I was going to tell you some of the interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
He had 2 children by his first wife, Herman and
Bertha.
And Herman he came to see us when we lived on that, what I call, what you said it was called, where Verl was born. Is that the Stouter place?
No, that was John Sailor's home place.
Well, yeah, he came to see us. And I was pretty small. I had to have been about 4, I guess. And they took me fishing in a little creek down there. And Herman was a cut up. He was a cut character. So they finally caught a little catfish, and they let me catch that same catfish. I don't know, several times. And then finally I got one so big I couldn't raise it up. And then the rest of it, I got a hold of an old rubber boot. All day was sitting. Herman was just laughing. He's talking. And Dad also told me is Herman was quite an inventive mind. They made a cart to run on a railroad track. Hand pump cart. Of course they. And then he was an electrician in the mine, and he worked there till the day he died. And he was one of those people that he never brought his tools out of the mine.
Hmm.
He left his tools in the mine. He always hid them someplace. And when he died, they lost his tools.
Hmm.
And he had 2 children, and one of them, his name was Paul. The last I knew of him, he lived in Decatur, Illinois, and he actually came to see us once. We've lost track of him since then. And that Bertha I used to know about all their family.
Let's see, Christian was born in 1863, and he died in 1933. So.
How old does that make him?
63 to 33?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I think that'd be 70 years old.
Oh, he was 77. I remember going to his funeral. It was a huge, huge funeral.
He was well known. Mm-hmm.
He was, he's a very prominent citizen in Preston Township.
Now, he started a shipping association. You got to remember, it's hard for us to grasp, and even me to grasp right now, but then when they could get market livestock, they had that little shipping association was a group that went together and they built some corrals and they grouped stuff at the railroad station.
I see, because they ship them by rail.
Shipped really had to be shipped by rail.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I come along, well, let's see, anyhow, the shipping association kind of disbanded and went into, they started trucking the whole livestock into St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
But livestock used to be kind of more or less a more consistent income than most of them had. Well, a lot of interesting things happened. During those worst drought years during the Depression, Dad took Merle and I to St. Louis to see a ball game. We also went down to see the terrible trainloads of cattle come in. Always be some dead, they were starving to death out there. Anyhow, in this game, a baseball game we saw Dizzy Dean and Paul Dean, and we saw Babe Ruth at the end of his career.
Ooh.
Ruth just made the Dean boys made him look terrible. And then
He couldn't hit their pitches.
no, he was his career was done.
Hmm. So Dizzy Dean was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals?
Yes, and his brother Paul.
Oh.
Dizzy Dean got most all the glory. He was probably the best thing, wasn't that?
They were both really good.
Yes, but Dizzy was the ace.
How did you meet your wife?
To his brother.
Hmm. Was Lucille a friend of Verl?
Yeah, they'd gone out together, I guess, and they well, even during the war, there was churches were a real gathering point for youth, and they were very active in the youth organizations.
Well, this has been really a lot of fun, and I hope that we can do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Was there anything you wanted to know?
Well, let's run it off.